So, the fox, the crane, and the golden rule. It sounds simple, right? You probably heard this story before, but have you ever really thought about it as this perfect, almost mathematical model of justice? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're breaking down this ancient fable to see what it really teaches us about action, consequence, and that thing we all know, the golden rule. I mean, have you ever felt like that? That feeling when you've been slighted or tricked and you just wish the world had some way of, balancing the scales. It's a pretty universal feeling, isn't it?
Well, guess what? This ancient story suggests that the scales do balance themselves. The idea is that our actions have this natural return path. Whatever you send out into the world, it argues, eventually comes right back to you.
And this whole idea, this boomerang effect, is really the key to the entire story.
Okay, so there's a fancy term for this boomerang effect, reciprocity. And really, it's just a fundamental principle of how people interact. You find it in cultures all over the world. Simply put, it's the idea that the way you treat people is pretty much the way you can expect to be treated yourself. All right, let's get into the story itself. Act 1, the provocation. This is the moment the boomerang is first thrown, and it all starts with a very selfish act from our fox.
So, picture this. In a forest, we've got two friends, or so it seems. There's a clever fox, maybe a little too clever for his own good, and a friendly, kind crane. But one day, the fox's mischievous side gets the better of him. He decides to play a trick.
And what the fox does here is so deliberate. This was not an accident. First, he invites his friend over for dinner. Sounds nice, right? Then he cooks a delicious meal. Some versions of the story mention a chicken or fish curry. And then comes the crucial third step. He serves the whole thing on a wide, shallow plate. And the result is exactly what he planned. For the fox, dinner's great. He laps up the entire meal with no problem. But for the crane, with its long, elegant beak, it's impossible. It can't get a single drop. It's left hungry and embarrassed. So the crane leaves with an empty stomach, but a very full understanding of what just happened. The trick was obvious. And the crane decides, you know what? This can't stand. A lesson needs to be taught.
And so we enter Act 2. The boomerang that the fox threw is now on its inevitable journey right back to him.
Sometime later, the crane extends a dinner invitation of its own. And the fox, completely oblivious and probably just thinking about another free meal, happily accepts. He has no idea what's coming his way. And just look at the setup here. It's brilliant. The crane follows the exact same steps. An invitation, a delicious meal, maybe a fragrant fish curry or a sweet pudding. But then comes the twist. The meal is served in two tall, narrow jars. And the results? It's a perfect mirror image of the first dinner. For the crane, it's easy. It just dips its long beak into the jar and enjoys the whole meal. But for the fox, with his wide snout, he can't do anything but stare at the jar, unable to get a single taste. So the fox is left just as the crane was, hungry, helpless, and now, finally, he gets it. As he sits there, smelling the wonderful food he can't possibly eat, he experiences the exact same humiliation he inflicted on his friend. The boomerang has landed. So the story itself is pretty simple, but the message is actually pretty profound. So what's the core moral here? Well, it really just boils down to this, doesn't it? You get what you give. It's a direct and powerful statement of cause and effect. The story's justice is just crystal clear. The fox set the rules of the game with his selfish trick. The crane simply played by those exact same rules to mirror the lesson right back at him. And this isn't a lesson from just one culture. You can trace this story to multiple traditions. For example, here's the moral in English. And here it is in Telugu from Indian folklore. It translates directly, which just shows how universal this theme of fairness really is. So that brings up a really good question. Why has this simple little animal story been told and retold for centuries? What makes it so powerful? I think the answer isn't just what the story says, but how it says it. The real elegance of this fable comes from its structure. It's this perfectly balanced, symmetrical narrative that makes its point not just with words, but with its very design. Think about why it works so well. You've got simple characters that are easy to understand. The cause and effect is immediate. You're not waiting around for some vague concept of karma. You've got that perfectly married structure of the two dinner parties, which makes the lesson impossible to miss. And it all serves this one theme that every single one of us gets, that deep, universal desire for fairness.
And that leaves us with a final thought. This fable presents this perfect, almost mathematical form of justice. But real life? Well, real life is usually a lot messier, isn't it? So I'll leave you with this question. What's the cleverest, most fitting boomerang of justice you've ever witnessed or heard about? Something to think about.